I'm here today with Dan Gale, who is the owner of the Exhale Holiday Park. Kia ora, Dan, and thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, g'day Andrew, thank you.
Dan, obviously you were badly affected by Cyclone Gabrielle and have been calling for accountability about the civil defence response. Before we get into what happened on the night, just tell us a bit about your background and how you came to own the holiday park.
Yeah, so my parents moved us out there in 1987, November, and then in 1995 they reopened the campground, and so sort of grew up there from age 13 with the camp being reopened, and went off to university and a bit of overseas travel, etc., and came back and took over it in 2011, started running it for the parents, and in 2013 me and the wife bought the business and went from there and grew it by over 300% in basically under 10 years.
So a good life and a good business as well. Obviously lots of diverse people coming through, international travellers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, pretty cool lifestyle. Not as cool as everyone thinks over the summer. It's pretty busy, but yeah, you know, I got to spend a lot of time with my kids and my family. Do everything from being a plumber to a mechanic to mowing the lawns to being on the office and phone, and yeah, meet people from all over the world. Some of my best mates I've met through the business, and yeah, no, it was thoroughly enjoyable.
And a beautiful spot as well, eh?
Yeah, 13 acres by the Esk River, which is normally a lovely spot. But yeah, it'll be lovely again.
Now, take me back to the time before the cyclone struck. What information had you received about the storm coming?
So, well, it was all over Channel 1 and 3 News to begin with. We knew it was coming down, and they were just curious as where the path was going to take it. Initially it was sort of going to hit Auckland and then go off, hit Gisborne and go out off the coast, but as it got closer to the time it was apparent that it was going to hit us. So on the Wednesday I started preparing over the road to take our caravans and machinery over there to where it would normally be safe in a small flood event. So yeah, I started preparing on the Wednesday and Thursday, and then as it got closer and closer to the Monday night when the flood event took place, it was more and more apparent that it was going to flood our place, obviously, but never had the information delivered to me in a prompt time to say that the whole valley was going to flood. Yeah.
Now, what flood protection systems and that did you have at your campsite?
Okay, so I get telemetry direct to my cell phone via text from the regional council.
Yeah.
It sends me warnings at 2.5 metre river rise, 3.6, 4.6, and then after that stops. But my own river alarm, which we have a float valve system, and it goes off and sets a physical alarm in our house at 3.6 metres river rise and 4.6. So it's a preliminary warning saying to us to get ready, and then the 4.6 is get gone. And so, yeah.
Now, how high has it ever got in the past?
7.2 metres in Bowler, and same in 2018.
Oh, okay. And were your houses flooded then?
So in Bowler, no, it came close, but our house was on the ground, ground level, and in 2018 nowhere near, because our house was, after Bowler, put on 3 metre poles, and so knee deep under the garage basically.
Okay.
Yep.
That's pretty good, yeah. And so when did you realise that you had to clear this campsite of people?
I evacuated our campground on the Saturday and Sunday prior.
Yeah. Did you just think rather be safe than sorry?
No, I knew that our place would flood. With the warnings of between 300 and 400 mils, it was obvious that my place would flood on that, based on that information.
How many people were in the holiday park? Because it's February, so it was still
about 50, and then we told others not to turn up.
And were people compliant? Did they listen to you? Was it easy to get them going?
Yeah. No, they know that I knew what I was doing.
And so, when did you realise that it was going to probably be the worst that you had seen?
Weeks later, after I finally got the email so what happened was the council sent out an email at 11:15 p.m. and I had left the camp at 10:30 when it was already when it was coming across the land, because I stayed to make sure that no tourists turned up and got trapped or in trouble.
Yeah.
So we left at 10:30. I got an email at 11:15. Of course, I didn't know because I'd left my computer at home. And then weeks later, after the event, when we had a community meeting, I went into my emails and found that sitting there. And what I read alerted me to the fact that had I seen that, or had it been sent out earlier, I could have guaranteed that the whole valley would flood.
So when do you think the council first had that information?
9:30 p.m.
9:30. And have you had discussions with them about why it took so long?
I've had a discussion with one person, yeah.
And what did they say?
And they said because it took 2 hours to analyse it.
So this is your whole beef with the civil defence response, that it wasn't nimble and they weren't proactive and getting the information out quickly?
No, my beef is the fact that they do not appear to have a plan. When the river hits, so when they received this information, the river was sitting at 6.2 metres, and that's at 10 o'clock. They received this information half an hour prior. They then had to model it, and their model said another 150 to sort of 180 mils of rain was to come on top of what had already fallen. That's a given that the valley was going to flood. And when the river continued to rise, and at I think it was 2:30 a.m. the telemetry system got smashed off the bridge, they still didn't hit the button. It is evident that they didn't have a plan.
And did you try and have any other form of communication with them while all this was happening? Or I suppose you were just focused on sort of surviving, really?
At 11 at night,
Yeah.
at 11 we were done. There was no power, there was no anything.
Yeah.
So there was no more communications.
Yeah. Did anyone come round did you have emergency services coming round to help you?
I didn't need any help.
Okay.
Because I'd already evacuated.
Yeah.
However, the police went around some of the residents on the riverside of the railway track and knocked on some doors at Shore Road and got told some people they should evacuate. And then around about midnight, the volunteer fire brigade got out and told as many people as they could. But unfortunately, that was pretty much too late by then, as the river was rising very rapidly.
Had you got your kids and that out earlier before that, or did you all leave together?
No, my kids and wife, they were up at my parents' house up on the hill, sort of like eight-ish. Yeah.
Did you ever feel in danger yourself?
No.
Yeah. And now, silly question, but what was it like seeing the water rushing through your home and your business and that, and realising that this was going to be the worst you've ever seen?
Well, when we left and it was flooding across our property, I wasn't worried at all because I had no further information available at hand to know that it was going to become the worst ever. However, when we got up in the morning and we could actually see anything because it was pitch black, it was a quick realisation that everything was destroyed basically.
So this was from your parents' house up on the hill?
Correct.
So did you have a good view of what was going on?
Could view the whole, most of the valley, yeah.
And describe what you felt when you saw it. Was it just like absolute horror? Yeah.
Well, yeah, just you knew that everything was done and the damage was going to be horrendous. You could see the water going down sort of with rapids. It was hillside to hillside. You could see that houses in some cases were up to the gutters. We could see a truck sitting on the main road. And our first thought is, where is everybody?
So you at that stage feared that there would be many people who maybe hadn't made it? Yeah,
well, we didn't know who had got evacuated or we didn't know anything because we'd lost comms and power basically before midnight. Yeah.
And it's quite a close-knit community, is it? East Valley?
Oh, it's even closer than it now.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, no, it is. It's a great community.
And did you help people in the aftermath of everything happening?
Yeah, we so as soon as we could get back down into the valley floor, my brother grabbed my dad's bobcat, and we went and opened up the road along where the truck stop is, and cleared that out so we could get along there and find out where people were, etc. The jet boats had been going up and down picking people up, so they dropped a couple off to us and put them in side-by-sides and took them as far as we could to get to somewhere to go. But we were locked in basically. So
yeah. So when everything the water had subsided and you went back to your property, just describe that and what you saw and the damage.
Yeah. So basically covered in silt, and you couldn't really get across a lot of it because it was still absolute sodden. But yeah, we picked our way across some of the exposed areas where the water had gone fast and basically left it at original ground height. And just got up into our house, and it had got just under the bench height. Okay. And there was mud, there was silt sort of, I don't know, maybe 20 centimetres deep in our house. And so, just lots of water and silt really, and everything had floated around and tipped over, but that was basically it.
And all the facilities on the camping ground, and they'd all destroyed as well, though?
No, one building's pretty much entirely intact.
Oh, good.
It's amazing. It's got a 1 by 1 metre square window on the front and still intact.
Wow.
Yet the rear one blew out with the pressure of the water. One toilet block is basically 95% fine, apart from having lots of silt inside of it, which we can just dig out or slurry out. And but the main ablution block is damaged, but everything's still there. So it just needs dug out basically, and a new roof put on top of it. So yeah.
So lots of work to do here.
Yeah, lots of work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, the one thing that has come out of this is how the community, as you say, even more close-knit and has rallied together and that. What were the initial concerns of people, and how have those changed? How's the mood changed, and what people feeling now?
Yeah, so we're very lucky in the valley. We had a unaffected part of our community come to the rescue of us that were impacted, and the initial concern, so we were locked in the valley as such because the roads weren't open. It took a couple of days to get out over the back way, but first concerns were that people were running out of fuel for generators. That was the very start issues, and then misinformation. Like we were hearing that the bridges are gone. That's what everyone kept telling us, the army, etc. The bridges are gone, and we're thinking, well, how are we going to get bloody food and fuel if all the bridges are gone? Yeah. So massive amounts of misinformation came out to begin with, and so once the community started to connect back together, based over in King George Hall, and then just sort of realising the scale of it. Then the concerns, apart from immediate where is everybody, went to fuel. Then it went to clean up, where are we going to live, just all the standard stuff really. So people started, getting put up with other people, and eventually started to find places to live as the weeks went on, be it temporary and then to semi sort of permanent. And then, for myself, it was pretty obvious that the government, when they got on, we had a generator, so we had the TV going. Within day 2, I see Sir Brian Roach on there talking about managed retreat. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking, oh well, this is what they've done in Christchurch and Matata, and they're going to want to shift us on, and obviously that's become the case.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And just in terms of there were some quite incredible meetings that were held and quite angry people and that. Is that anger still there?
Yep. To a certain degree, it's just anger at different topics.
Yeah. And what are those topics now?
It's so there. We got one part of our community that's in 2A, so the frustration of being in limbo and not knowing whether they're going to be put in 3 or 1, so they're just waiting, and that's really hard for them.
Yeah.
So that's one section. Then there's the category 3. A lot of people want to take a buyout, but they're frustrated that it's taken 7 months to get. Well, we're still no further forward yet, but 7 months to be able to move on, and then there's the people that want to stay, and the frustration and anger that there is no pathway currently for those to do so. They can choose to stay, but they'll have no support from the council. They won't issue permits, so it's not really a voluntary buyout at all.
And if you don't mind me asking, what category are you in? What's your property status of your property?
Category 3.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and what's your view on a buyout, or do you want to remain there?
Well, there'll be a buyout offer for our residents, but there's no buyout offer for the campground, of which I have a resource consent to operate.
And you've invested a lot in that campground, and it's a business.
Correct.
And if it was a normal situation, you would be able to sell that business, and for a fairly decent amount.
Correct.
So where are you at now? How are you fighting this?
How am I fighting it? Basically trying to lobby to get a new category so that we can utilise early warning systems like I did to keep people safe.
Yeah.
And it's hypocritical to say I can't live at my home, but I have a consent to run my campground, which includes an early warning system, and yet they aren't category 3ing their freedom campsites or the dock sites that got flooded.
Are they in the same sort of area?
Glen Falls,
Yeah.
absolutely smashed by the flood. No talk about category 3 there.
Okay.
And there was no one there to give them any warnings. So how can they say that's okay, but it's not for me?
Yeah. So what are you going to do?
I'm rebuilding my business, and I'm going back. I have a resource consent to operate.
But you won't live there?
No, I can live there.
Yeah.
I don't have to take their buyout.
Okay.
So.
And how's that going to work for you? Because as you say, council resources and that sort of thing. So how will that affect you?
Well, I've got power, I've got water, I've got sewage. All they provide is a road that they maintain poorly.
Yeah. So this is a long road ahead. How are you going to get to a point where you're able to open and be running as a viable business again?
I would imagine I will be up and running by Labour Weekend 24.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
So how are you surviving in the meantime, if you don't mind me asking? Yeah.
I've got new employment, so
Okay.
yeah, and the wife's just about to start some part-time work to fit in with the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed you've got a Give a Little page as well that's been set up for you as well.
Yeah, some of our friends set that up for
Yeah,
us,
that's
and
good. Yeah.
and our friends and family contributed generously, which helped immensely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what sort of mental toll has this taken on you and your family?
Yeah, it's pretty stressful. I think earlier on it wasn't as hard as it is now.
Yeah.
And early on you're just fighting for survival effectively, but not in that sense. But now it's more stressful because the uncertainty and the fact that the councils and the government can't just clearly say this and that is far more complicated than something like Christchurch, where it was just cookie cutter, all residential sections and houses. We have people with businesses, orchards that are only viable because you actually live there. just not viable to have a 20 hectare block perhaps, and then have to have a house somewhere else and pay mortgage on that, and then have to drive all the way out there to have your machinery ripped off every 5 minutes by people that, because there's no presence on the land. So, it makes things hard. Yeah.
So has crime been an issue, and is it still an issue?
Yeah, things have been stolen, smashed up, scrap metal stolen, vandalism, just petty stuff really, but, for people that, some people haven't even had time to clean out their houses because they, A, haven't been able to access it, or B, face it, and then people have had like boxes of personal goods stolen and stuff like that, which I can't see any value to the criminals. It's just petty stuff. I don't know, I don't get it.
So you've seen the best and the worst of human behaviour, because obviously you've seen how the communities come up, and that. Has that given you sort of hope and sort of courage that the community is banding together like this?
Yeah, our community had a fantastic response, and they're still supporting us. Some people are struggling facing what has occurred, and they're unable to go back. Everyone had a different experience on the night, so I think what experience you had definitely forms how you view things, and also, if you're younger or closer to retirement, all those factors have a big impact on how you view the situation and how they respond to it.
And now the response by the council and the response by the government, has it been the same? Is there a difference in the way the two have responded?
Well, I haven't seen anyone from Labour in the Valley yet.
Haven't you?
Not a single one.
So none of the local MPs?
I haven't seen Stuart Nash there, or any of their 3 different cyclone ministers yet, no.
Because they say they're coming in and they've been there supporting the community.
Not to us.
Yeah.
The council, obviously the clean-up's going pretty well.
Yeah.
And that's really heartening. You can sort of see the light. That comes from the HBRC side more so. I think they've done a pretty good job on the clean-up, and hopefully that continues on. For HTC, they're sort of waiting on the categorisation, and there's a lot of unknowns still.
Yeah. Now there are 2 reviews, there are 2 inquiries that are underway. There's one at a local level, at the regional council level, and then there's one at the national level. What do you want from those reviews? What would be a good thing for you to come from those reviews?
Really simple. Set up flood evacuation plans with early warning systems for the entire country, for all of our riverside communities. That's what I want.
And do you want heads to roll for what happened?
Not necessarily, but it needs a very... I want to see the plans put in place, because I don't think there is a plan. And that's evident to me when there's water lapping over the back of the EIT stop banks and they haven't evacuated everybody. They should have been evacuating people when it was a metre or so off the top of the stop bank, not when it was damn close to busting it. That's what I want to see, and it needs to be reviewed. I'm not headhunting individuals, but the whole system needs to be revamped, and because there is no defence in civil defence, it's more like an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And I think whoever's in charge of those plans needs to be resourced properly, and there also needs to be massive local input and decentralised civil defence again back to the communities to give them the power to respond. Yeah.
Do you think areas like Taradale should have been evacuated earlier?
Definitely.
Yeah.
We're just lucky that it didn't burst on the Taradale side, because we'd have potentially hundreds dead and thousands of homes destroyed and all those people displaced.
Yeah. So what you want is a clear plan of how they will, because it's going to get worse. I mean, because we've seen more frequency, and we saw some of those bridges were 1 in 100, 1 in 500 years, and they were just smashed as well. So you want a comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I want to see the early warning systems in place with set heights that when the river hits X height, a warning goes out, and then when it hits X height again, they push the button to get gone. We need river evacuation, flood evacuation plans like tsunami plans.
When you rebuild things, what are the personal things you're going to do to ensure that you have warning systems and also evacuation procedures? What will you be doing?
Exactly the same, because they worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I'd do structurally different on my property, but it won't affect the protection of life, more the protection of property, is I'd install more shelter belts, because it stops the debris.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's evident throughout the valley.
Yeah.
But in terms of evacuation plans, I'd keep mine exactly the same, and I'd follow it and do the exact same thing again, because it worked. And that's what I want to see everyone else have access to. And if you've got a plan like that and you follow it, which you should be doing anyway, and you can get out in time. It took over 12 hours for that flood to happen.
Yeah.
There was no flash flood.
Yeah. It started looking like it was going to be really bad, and there was still time to get people out,
Yeah.
if they had moved earlier. Yeah.
Yep, easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
From my place flooding, being covered at 10:30 at night, to the rest for it to even get over the road, was still another basically 2 hours. In 2 hours you can get out easy as.
Because some people were evacuated in other areas, were evacuated at 6, 7 in the morning, so it went on for quite a while,
Well, Esk was flooded before they even sent out the evac text.
Yeah.
For other areas I'm not too au fait with, because my whole concentration's been out in Esk.
Yeah. Now, Dan, will things ever return to normal?
Well, it'll be some sort of new normal.
Yeah.
But will the valley bounce back and look like it did? Yeah, definitely. It'll just look a bit different.
Yeah.
We may not have post and wire with vineyards, or though some people have reinstated their vineyards already. We might not have post and wire orchards. Perhaps we have cropping, perhaps we have avocado orchards, something that's easier to bounce back from. But yeah, I mean, the church has been reinstated. I'm reinstating my place. A lot of the land has been remedied, and yeah, it just won't have the population, because those people will take the buyout, and I imagine that will be the end of those rights under the current settings.
Dan Gale, thank you so much for your time, and all the best for the future.
Cheers. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks.